And at that point, I was just like, oh, I'm done with you.
Patty, how did you find Carnivore?
Well, it started off as a really, really low period of my life. I had been suffering from a mood disorder, clinical depression since I was a teenager, and I'd never been able to tolerate any of the medications, and I had just kind of gotten to the point where I just decided that I was going to live and I was going to power through it, and I was doing kind of okay with that. But then I had a series of personal tragedies. I basically I witnessed my only child pass away, and then I was taking care of my mother at the end of her life, and I witnessed her pass away uh, unexpectedly. And these personal tragedies collectively left me with uh, PTSD, which made it, um, and the clinical depression made it basically impossible for me to recover from the PTSD, plus the fact that I was also suffering from a myriad of health problems, like most people are who are following the standard American advice. I was almost vegan. My husband was as sick as I was. And, you know, you don't get any better in your advice, and the tendency is to just vegan harder. And anyway, basically my collective health problems of PTSD and IBS, crippling IBS, and candidiasis, and all kinds of other gut disturbances, and plus I felt physically like shit, and I felt mentally like shit, and I had lost my only child, and my husband was ill, and we were not in a situation where we could be a very much mental support for each other. And it just all came to a head in late 2017, I would guess, where I was sitting on my couch watching television, and I was just suddenly overwhelmed by this feeling of pointlessness, and I just kind of prayed and I said, Lord, if you want me to live, something's going to have to change, because I'm at the end of my rope. I have nothing left. I have no will or no energy to try anything else. I have tried everything I can think of. I have pushed through the last of my strength, and unless you bring me an answer, I'm just going to sit here on my couch and watch television until I die. And I like to say the Lord answered my prayer the very next day. I was watching TV and I saw a TED Talk by a man named Dr. Peter Attia. And I don't espouse everything that he holds true, but I heard for the first time, I heard him use the phrase, instead of lifespan, health span. And that seemed interesting to me. And he was saying some things that I had never heard before. And it made me perk up a little bit. And, well, without going into too long and drawn out a story, I looked him up on the internet and I found some other TED Talks, and YouTube being what it is, it sent me along and gave me one of Dr. Ken Berry's videos, who was still in his keto phase at that point. But this was something I had never heard before: low carbohydrate, and and uh, learning about blood glucose and stuff that nobody had ever bothered to tell me. I'd been infertile. I had one son, and then he passed away from a drug overdose, and nobody had ever told me that my fertility problems might be due to uh, prediabetes. because I'd always been told, no, 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 you're not diabetic. But now knowing what I know, I was probably hyperinsulinemic. But since nobody ever measured that, and this was also back in way, way before when I was first diagnosed with infertility, no, PCOS was not a thing. It wasn't a medical diagnosis. That came after, so it was probably PCOS, but nobody ever diagnosed it because it wasn't a thing. You know, it was like, oh yeah, some women just have these cystic ovaries and some women don't. We don't know why, but it doesn't do anything. Okay, how wrong we were. But anyway, so after I went down Dr. Berry's rabbit hole, I became emboldened to try a low carb diet. And that went really well for me. It didn't solve all my problems. It did do a lot to uh, to help my mood disorder. But I would say it made it better. It didn't remediate it altogether, but it did make it better. And I began to lose a little weight, and I weighed over 300 pounds. And to date, I've lost 120 pounds altogether. Yeah. So, um, so anyway, I became emboldened to push a little further and went from low carb to attempt keto, and that helped a little more. And then because I managed to see one of his naughty videos, I became kind of a fan of Bart K. And I've been following Bart since 2018, which is about when he started. Yeah, so, and I actually got to work with and hired his partner, Pim, as a coach in 2020 during the thing. And I consider she and Bart personal friends at this point. Because I've been following them for so long, and they know me when I jump onto their live streams and stuff, so that's fun. But anyway, I started listening to Bart and Pim and the science, and it really, really hit home for me because long ago, when I was at my heaviest, I had thought about having weight loss surgery. And so I decided, well, if I'm going to consider weight loss surgery, I'm going to know exactly what I'm in for, and I'm going to know what they're going to do to me, and I'm going to know what the side effects are, and I'm going to know how I'm going to suffer, and I'm going to know what the after effects are, and I'm going to know the failure rate and all that stuff. And then as I looked into it, I realized that that weight loss surgery is basically just a way to make it easy to fast. And I thought, well, hell, I don't have to have pieces of my body cut out to fast. I can do that by myself. And so I did. And I did have a limited amount of success with that. But I didn't tell anybody. I was ashamed because, the mantra at the time was, oh, you mustn't fast. You'll destroy your uh, metabolism, you know. And little did I know that that was completely not true. But anyway, so I realized as I went back that this was not the first time I had been told something that by professionals that absolutely fundamentally turned out not to be true, right? And so that I just really started learning from Bart and Pim, and then after probably about 2021, yeah, 2021 was when I was emboldened to go carnivore. And um, I will tell you, a lot of people won't consider me carnivore because I do eat a small amount of, vegetable foods just because I like them. And I'm not really hung up on labels. So, I mean, people can call me anything they want. So I really don't care. um, I like to say, I can never mind the shit out of something. You just watch me. Anyway, um, so I consider myself carnivore because, as I determine it, I eat for all my nutrition, I eat animal products. And anything else that I eat just because I enjoy it. I'll eat a little tomatoes and a little onions and a little this and a little that. But um, what I eat to be healthy is beef, butter, eggs, chicken, fish, pretty much, or seafood. But anyway, and a little dairy here and there. I don't eat a whole bunch of it because um, I do have ongoing lung issues. I was born asthmatic, and sometimes the dairy is inflammatory for that. So I limit it, but I do eat a little bit anyway. So that's where it came in a nutshell, and that's how it got started. And as I've gone on, I consider my clinical depression to be fully in remission. I do not have issues with, well, I can't say I don't have issues. I don't have the kind of issues with IBS that I used to. I still have a few little symptoms, but they're not distressing and they're not controllable. I mean, and they are controllable. And it's not like it used to be. I used to be that I would not leave the house unless I knew where the bathroom was because it just wasn't safe. And I've done my share of pulling over on the side of the road and running into the bushes. Okay. During a car trip. Yeah. Yeah. I don't even want to tell you how many times that's happened. So, if you're going on a long car ride and you're in that condition, that's just something you have to be prepared for. Either that or you're going to make a mess all over the car, you know? Anyway, but my uh, PTSD is, I'm recovered. I figure I'm recovered from that. My mood disorder is completely remitted. My asthma is largely remitted. The only time I ever have to take any asthma medication is when I hit a trigger, like I walk into somebody smoking a cigarette or something and I get a face full of smoke or something, or like right now, I'm recovering from that virus. So I am taking my medication right now. But other than that, I go for months without taking any asthma medication. I consider myself mostly in remission for the asthma. So I don't take any daily medications at all anymore for anything except, you know, virus. But I will be 62 later this year, and I feel better and am doing more and accomplishing more and have more energy than I did when I was 40.
That's
Um,
awesome.
I feel like I felt when I was 20 almost in some ways. I have a couple of little things that nag. You know, there's only so much you can do with 60-year-old knees, no matter how good a shape you are. So, but anyway, um, I'm really just it's really interesting because I told a friend of mine earlier, um, I'm I'm in my 60s and I'm doing things and figuring things out about myself that most people figure out when they're in their teens and 20s. But I never did because I was so profoundly depressed that I just didn't have the energy to do anything but just get through day to day. And, you know, uh, it's really interesting to really be figuring out what you're made of at 60. Um, but here I am, and I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to another 30 years at least.
Yeah. So it's been 3 years, right?
Pretty much, basically, yeah,
So 3 years after living a lifetime of depression.
yeah.
Uh, that just I can't I just can't imagine how much different you must feel in the last 3 years.
Um, I am almost a completely different person. I say almost because there's a core in there that's, the same. I have a similar sense of humor. My sense of humor hasn't changed, and my personal values are largely the same. But as far as my capacity, as far as this is the first time in my life I've ever looked forward to the future and thought, yeah, that's cool. I'm good with the future. I'm raring for it. And this is the first time in my life at 61 years old that I've ever felt that way. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because for me, that part of the journey has been quite similar for me. I was always like, okay, well, I'm just getting older now. The wheels are coming off. It's just going to be downhill from now. And um, it was the future was like, oh, maybe I've got 10 good years left, 20 if I'm lucky, that kind of thing. And now it's like, okay, well, what's next? The
Exactly.
future looks bright.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, I just wanted to mention, speaking of, what I'm capable of and how I'm looking forward to the future. Scott Everson, Wired for Healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm working with him now. We just got finished doing Meat Stock 2024, and I was the chef for the event. Yeah. Yeah. I fed like 60 people a day, not entirely by myself, but I ran the kitchen and I had a lot of volunteer help. But yeah, I ran the kitchen and I helped do the meal plan and worked with the purveyors and stuff like that. I mean, that's what I'm trained to do, but I never had the energy to really do it before, except on, a small scale, for family and friends. But um, I 5 years ago I would never have attempted, and now I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
And that's a pretty big achievement considering you were catering for the likes of Sean Baker and a lot of
Oh
other hungry
yeah,
carnivores, right?
yeah,
It's not like making a few salads. It's like you had to really feed people.
yeah, yeah. So I was the one actually who posted the picture of Scott with the lamb testicles that you were so entertained by.
Did you did you
Audra
try
and I
any?
really hit it off, by the way. I saw her
Oh, nice.
interview with you. Yeah, Audra and I were hanging out totally.
Nice. Did you try a testicle?
I did. It was okay to start with, but it had an aftertaste I didn't care for. So I don't think I'll be partaking of any more lamb testicles. But you know, I was I was brave enough and game to try. But it was like, not for me. No.
The other question I've got is, was that just kind of a thing for the event, or is that kind of a regular thing for Scott to be eating?
Offal? Oh yeah, he likes that stuff. I didn't get to taste the sweetbreads. Um, but that was because by the time they dragged those out, I was like so busy. It was really difficult for me to calm down enough to sit down and eat. So I was kind of like nibbling as I was cooking, tasting and setting aside little bits and bobs for myself as I went along, because if I'm really really busy and just really exerting myself, it's difficult for me to sit down and eat, and it'll make me nauseated. So there was several things I didn't really get to taste because it just wasn't physically in the zone to do that. But that was okay because I really was in my element, and it was great. And Sally Norton and Courtney Luna and Serena Music and oh god, but besides Sean Baker and Dr. Kiltz, I ended up making a small appearance on Kiltzy's live stream early in the morning. I think it was Sunday morning. But anyway, so yeah,
Nice.
it was magical, and I'm signed up. already signed up to do it again next year in September.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so when you're at home, how are you eating day to day?
Mostly beef, chicken, eggs, and butter. Mostly. I do like a bit of fish, some shrimp now and then. But and I do, like I say, I do the odd vegetable and the odd bit of fruit. I'll eat a few grapes or a few berries. Um, I do have a few things in the winter time. There's a fruit that comes in season during the wintertime in the U.S. called a pomelo, which is a type of grapefruit, which I just adore. So I do a couple of those in the winter time, and then I'm done with them because they're only available seasonally anyway. Um, but other than that, it's just the odd
Is that
piece of fruit. Yeah,
is that OMAD or TUMAD?
two. Well, I usually eat one larger meal, and then at another time of day, I usually have kind of a small meal. I guess you might call it a snack, 8 to 10 bites of food. I usually It's either, depending on how my schedule is going, I'll either eat the smaller meal early in the day and then have the larger meal late afternoon, or I'll eat the larger meal like 11 or 12 o'clock and then have the small meal, in the evening, depending on how my schedule's going. But it's um, usually half a pound or so of meat and maybe a couple of eggs on top of that, depending on how hungry I am. And then my other meal will be maybe, a few bites of cheese or some yogurt, or just a few more bites of whatever it was I had earlier in the day, little leftovers, or, you know, cold meat, just like I said, about 8 to 10 bites. Yeah, so
So,
kind of too mad.
mm, is your husband joining you on this?
Oh, yes. He was resistant at first. My husband has his own health issues. He has chronic pancreatic insufficiency from a series of medically induced injuries, I have to say, which I don't want to go into. But anyway, and so he has to take pancreatic supplements. And he also has chronic pain from what they called failed back syndrome, where he had a back injury and he had surgery for it. And the surgery was really successful, but eventually those surgeries wear out, and then usually they can't. The surgery is not revisable. So he takes several different therapies to ameliorate that, but has a chronic pain. And uh, he has a few different digestive issues because of all the medications he's taken over the years. But he was resistant at first because he had become convinced, like I said, before, when we were both really ill, he'd become convinced that going vegetarian was the answer, and I was going along with that. And um, being a cook, it's like, you get creative. I mean, that was one of my creative outlets. That was one of the few things that, excuse me, that was gave me, that I had passion for. And so I was getting more and more and more creative in the kitchen, and then getting less and less and less energetic because I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And you know anyway, but now he is fully on board. He saw what happened to me. He saw the weight I lost. He saw me turn into a pretty much a different person. And he just started gravitating towards, low carb. And then he just started ditching the vegetables one by one. And one day he just said, "Yeah, don't bother cooking vegetables anymore. I don't need them." So, yeah, he's completely on board. So he doesn't even bother with anything, but his favorite food is pork rinds.
Nice. That's
So
awesome.
anyway,
Um, so do you ever get any questions from friends or extended family about what is this thing you're doing? Like you seem to be eating lots of meat.
well, I was always very vocal with my family about what I was doing because I've been working on, I've been convinced for years that no matter what any doctor told me, that diet had to be a major issue in health. I mean, I just didn't see how it could be otherwise. I actually had a pulmonologist tell me once that I was seeing for my asthma, and um, I asked the doctor, and this was after I'd started low carb and I started seeing my asthma symptoms come down. And I was actually talking to the pulmonologist about, because we were titering down my medication. And I said, I just wonder if it could have anything to do with my diet, because that's the only thing I've really changed. And he went, no, 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 no. This is what he actually said to me. He said, some people just go into these remissions and we really don't know why, but diet doesn't have anything to do with it. And that immediately the big red light went off in my brain. So you don't know why it happens, but you do know it's not diet. And at that point, I was just like, "Oh, I'm done with you." And it is like at this point, I have a very nice relationship with a nurse practitioner in my town, and the only time I see her is when I'm sick in a in a when I'm immediately sick, and I don't take any advice from her about my continued health, and she understands that. And only time I see her is when I'm sick and I need a particular prescription, and I know enough about myself and my health nowadays. I just go in there to the office and tell her what I want, and she says, "Oh, that sounds reasonable," and she gives it to me. So I feel really
That's
blessed.
that's a great relationship to have.
Yeah.
It's mm. Oh, nice. Have you been able to kind of talk anyone else into or
Oh,
convince anyone else
well,
to do carnivore?
I actually, um, I I almost got my sister on board. She understands the principle, but she's pretty much carb addicted, and she just told me once that she doesn't want to stop eating carbs. And she used to be like the hot sister. She's 4 years younger than me, and she used to be the hot sister, and I was the fat sister, and now I'm smaller than her. So, but she's still decided that she doesn't need to stop eating carbs, and I'm just waiting for her to, you know. But the thing that I really would like to see her is she has a couple of other health conditions that I don't want to go into, but I really think um, being in ketosis could help her, but I haven't gotten her on board with that yet. But nobody bugs me. I'd like to get my brother on board too, because he has a couple of issues. They're all like very supportive of this is what I want to do, but they're just not convinced that it's right for them. So maybe someday they'll come around. But I don't get any diss from anybody. And even if I did, it's like I said before, I could never mind the hell out of it. Just watch me.
So, what do you think is the best way for people to get started with carnivore so that they can stick to it?
Well, I only have my own experience to go by, but I I never had any experience going low carb with like the keto flu or anything like that, because I went into it really gradually. I started out by cutting out sugar and grains at first. That's all I did is I cut out sucrose and I cut out grains. And then after that, I cut out all starchy vegetables, and I went really slow. And I never had any of the problems of, like, keto flu or electrolyte imbalances or, low energy or anything, or sleep disturbance. Never had anything like that. And I'm convinced it's because I went so gradually. Um, but that's what I tell people. You can do it. Just do it a step at a time. I think a lot of people try to do it, they try to slam over because they hear these stories of, like, people that slam over and in 6 weeks, they're a new person. And sure, there are people who react that way, but that's not the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people are going to slam over, and in 6 weeks they're going to be crazy and feeling like shit, and their digestion's going to be all screwed up, and they're going to go, oh my God, why did I ever do this? I can't do this. This is not good for me. Because it's just, but if you know a little bit about physiology, and this is where I really love listening to Bart, is your body can't slam over like that. You have a you have processes in motion. If you're glucose dominant in your metabolism, your body creates a lot of enzymes and a lot of biochemicals for particular metabolic pathways. And when you go fat dominant, then your body has to switch over to prioritizing different metabolic pathways and creating the enzymes and the biochemicals for those pathways. And so they have to ramp down certain things and ramp up other things. And then on top of that, your microbiome has to change. And if you have a microbiome die off because you have a whole bunch of sugar loving, starch loving, fiber loving bacteria in your gut, and you all of a sudden you take that food away from them, they can have a die off, which is like having a gut full of dead stuff. That sounds just so healthy. Um, and that causes inflammation, and it can trigger autoimmune disorder, dysfunction. And also, what can also happen is the ones that are left, they can actually go to war with each other and start eating each other. And then once they've done that, if there's still a problem, and you still have an overpopulation of the bugs that need the starch or the sugar, and you have an underpopulation of the bugs that get along with the meat, what can happen is those microbes that like the starch and sugar can actually start feasting on the mucus lining of your bowel, and that can cause colitis. And then people think, oh my God, carnivore gave me colitis. No, carnivore didn't give you colitis. You doing something unsensible like slamming your diet over, which every single doctor who specializes in digestion, a gastroenterologist, will tell you, do not do that. Because all of this stuff is happening in concert. All this stuff is happening all at the same time. And your body has to back off one process and ramp up another one. And it takes time to do that. It can only produce these things so quickly.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Do it a step at a time.
Yeah. So, Patty, do you have a way of people reaching out to you? Do you have a website or a
I
YouTube or
don't
anything like
currently
that?
have a website. I have a YouTube channel, which is Carnivore Hippie. My handle is Carnivore Hippie 8071. And I have a lot of informational videos. I have a lot of videos of what I call rants, where I get irritated at different people, sometimes people in the vegan space and sometimes people in the carnivore space and sometimes medical professionals, where I will rant about things that I'm irritated about. And then I also do, because I'm a cook, I'm a chef, and I have recipes, and I'm publishing recipes, fun things that you can do, carnivore recipes you can do in the kitchen, some ketovore, a couple that are just purely low carb. I have a video up about low carb jam, which is fun, you know. But my focus on my YouTube is, when you've been a chef and you're practicing the standard American diet or even veganism, there's just an endless realm of creativity, because you're like an artist and you can just use everything that's at your disposal. And when I realized I couldn't really participate in that anymore, I couldn't even cook. It even felt funny cooking for other people, because I thought I can't participate in that anymore. And I thought I have to still have an outlet. And I thought there's got to be other people out there like me who enjoy cooking. And they think, how can I feel creative eating just cooking ground beef and eggs every day? So that's my aim. And that's what you'll see there. And also my story. And they can contact, my email is in the show notes for each video. And they can contact me in the comments. I'm working on getting into more social media, and Scott's going to be working with me to get a website up and going. And I have I've been screamed at by multiple people that I need to publish an e-cookbook, but that's just in the discussion phase.
Oh, nice. Well, I'm looking forward to that. So I'll link to your YouTube in the show notes. And
Okay.
Patty, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome, and thanks for letting me ramble on.